There was a psychedelics paper published in Nature just last week, and it may provide genuine hints into some of the mysteries that have eluded us for so long in relation to what psychedelics are actually doing in the brain. We all know that psychedelic drugs induce a powerful change in our perception of self, space, and time, but we're more recently discovering that these same effects could have a very positive effect on mental health. In clinical trials, a single high dose of 25 milligrams of psilocybin has shown to be incredibly effective at dealing with the symptoms of depression, addiction, and end-of-life anxiety. Psychedelics like psilocybin and LSD induce their effects through our serotonin system, more specifically through the serotonin 2A receptor. Interestingly, the chemical structure of these psychedelics is almost identical to the natural serotonin that our bodies produce. This is also why a psychedelic trip is known to take so long. The lock and key fit is so tight. But due to decades of pointless blockades in psychedelic research, as well as the actual difficulties in studying psychedelics in humans, it has remained somewhat of a mystery of what is actually happening in the brain when these serotonin-like imposters bind in the brain. Understanding this mechanism could be critical in unlocking the full therapeutic potential of psychedelic agents in mental health, and I really believe this paper could be a landmark study in that goal. The study is titled "Psilocybin Desynchronizes the Human Brain," and it's composed of giving young, healthy adults either 25 milligrams of psilocybin or 40 milligrams of the control methylphenidate, otherwise known as Ritalin. The purpose of the control drug is important to understand here. Drugs usually act on multiple different systems in the brain and have very different effects. The Ritalin was used in this case to control for the dopaminergic effects that happen with both psilocybin and Ritalin. If there's an effect that happens within the psilocybin group and not the Ritalin group, we can be a lot more confident that those effects are due to the serotonin system. As we've already discussed, it's specifically the serotonin system effects that we're interested in here, because they will also generalize to other psychedelic substances. Once the drugs were administered by the patients, the scientists need to take a peek into the brain to see what effects they're having. To do this, they use fMRI, or functional magnetic resonance imagery. These are snapshots of the activity of the brain modeled by blood flow. Blood flow is a good proxy for activity because when neurons are active and firing, they require energy that they get from oxygenated blood. To map how that brain function changes and evolves over time, they basically take lots of these individual snapshots and piece them together into a video. In the same way old movies used to be shot one frame at a time and sequenced into longer movies. This allowed the researchers to have an incredibly accurate and high-resolution picture of the brain connectivity changes that occurs during a psilocybin trip. Basically, what brain regions were talking to other brain regions, how loudly they were talking, and how often they were talking. This is how you can start to study the effects of psilocybin and how it interacts with the very neural wiring that make us us. And what they found was fascinating. Psilocybin caused profound and widespread disruption in brain connectivity. The chatter of the brain was distinctly different, over 300% greater change when compared with the Ritalin control. This is a conclusive finding, but the largest functional differences in the conductivity of the brain were related to the default mode network. This is a network we talk a lot about on this channel. The default mode network is simply a network of interconnected brain regions that is most active when our minds are at rest and not focused on the outside world. It's like the brain's default setting, the software that kicks in when we're daydreaming, reminiscing about the past, or thinking about the future, when we are focused inward rather than outward. Crucially, this region plays a very important role in our mental and emotional life. It's heavily involved in self-referential thoughts, how we think about ourselves and our place in the world. The network is also heavily implicated in how we think about others, our moral reasoning in relation to other people, and even how we dream about our future. The default mode network is really the network at the core of our identity, the good and the bad. In fact, it is this network that quiets when we enter the flow state. The flow state is core to my well-being, and my trick to entering the flow state is Magic Mind. Magic Mind is a research-backed productivity shot, and I've been taking it for 2 months every single day after lunch, and it helps me beat the post-lunch slump and get my most focused and creative work done. It contains research-backed ingredients like ashwagandha for stress and focus, lion's mane for cognitive function, and Rhodelia rosea for attention and mood elevation. Best thing is, they're so confident that you'll like it that there's a 100% refund guarantee, no questions asked, so there's literally no harm in trying Magic Mind. They also donate 5 cents to mental health charities across the United States for every single bottle sold, and Magic Mind are offering my viewers a whopping 48% off their first subscription in the description below. Use the code EvanMac10 at checkout for your first subscription of Magic Mind. I can't recommend them enough. We've known for a while that psychedelics' primary mechanism of action is its interactions with this default mode network. But until now, it's not exactly been clear what that mechanism is. What we see in this study is a decrease in connectivity with the default mode network and other subcortical structures like the thalamus, the basal ganglia, and the hippocampus. In the hippocampus, there was a specific disruption within the anterior region. Why do you care? Why is this important? Well, previous studies have shown that connectivity between the anterior hippocampus and the default mode network is highly correlated with depression and depressive-like symptoms. So this offers one possible mechanistic explanation to why psychedelics seem so beneficial in mental health, by basically breaking up the chatter between these two brain regions. But that is not all. The participants in the study were also given the quite remarkably named 30-item mystical experience questionnaire. This questionnaire aims to quantify the different subjective experiences that people go through while on psychedelic trips. Common ones might be feelings of connectedness, transcendence, loss of space and time, or feelings of awe. Combining this questionnaire with the huge amount of fMRI data they have for each patient allows the researchers to start drawing parallels between functional brain connectivity changes and subjective experiences. How incredible is that? Using some really fancy maths that I don't understand, they were able to show that mystical experiences are likely driven by the association cortex areas. Again, that's the prefrontal cortex, among others. And the factor most correlated with functional brain changes overall was transcendence of experience, a loss of space and time, a fundamental disruption of consciousness. Insane. While all this is so fascinating, it's not even the core discovery within this study. As per the name of the paper, psilocybin seems to desynchronize populations of neurons that usually act together. In a normal resting state, these synchronized brain activities are believed to be what is the constant modeling of reality, fundamentally what consciousness is. The greater the desynchronization between these populations of neurons, the greater the loss or disruption of consciousness. This is really a first attempt of a mechanistic understanding of how psilocybin and other psychedelics relate to consciousness as a whole. The Olympics is only a week away, so we can draw an interesting parallel with synchronized swimming. Usually the swimmers are perfectly in sync, they're perfectly trained and they're magnifying each other's actions. This is very collaborative and this is how the brain usually works. Well, under psilocybin, a few of these swimmers just start acting completely independently of the rest of the group. But this phenomenon of desynchronization has even further implications as the body's homeostatic plasticity mechanisms kick in. Homeostasis in this case refers to the brain's response to the atypical network patterns that are experienced during psilocybin. And the response includes a rapid upregulation of genes that are related to plasticity in the brain, helping it change and mold, be more adaptable. It is the expression of these very plasticity genes that allows the brain to be more adaptable and malleable, to get it out of any negative thought patterns that it might have been in, and to have its antidepressant effects. Although this is currently unproven and this mechanism does need to be consolidated with further research. The final and really exciting point here is that 21 days, 3 weeks after the administration of the psilocybin, you can still see disrupted connectivity between the anterior hippocampus and the default mode network. One of the co-authors of the paper, Nico Dosenbach, noted, "There's a massive effect initially, and when it's gone, a pinpoint effect remains." That's exactly what you would want in potential medicine. You wouldn't want people's brain networks to be obliterated for days, but you also wouldn't want everything to snap back to the way it was immediately, he said. You want an effect that lasts long enough to make a difference. If you're interested in keeping up to date with the most impactful neuroscience research as it happens, then subscribe to the channel and check out the Giant's Shoulder podcast. Thank you so much for watching.